Hi, welcome back to Voices 2018. I can't believe we're saying 2018. This is the 6th year of our Voices conference, and I want to welcome you to session number 3, Getting to Present, a journey to successful technical conference presentation. So this is by Dr. Ann Meixner. Ann and I have known each other for a number of years. She's active on Global Tech Women, and it is also a active blogger. If you haven't seen her website, you should definitely check it out. So a couple of things. There's a chat window at the bottom of the screen. You can launch that, and please feel free to introduce yourselves, as well as this is where we will be asking questions of Ann. So when she's ready for questions at the end of her presentation, I will let her know about those questions, and I'll be moderating that. And I think that's about it. We are recording the session, so the session will be available to look at again or to send to your colleagues in about an hour. So go ahead and take advantage of that. It's great to watch all of the recordings again. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann.
Thank you, Deanna. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how to get into a technical conference. And I call it Getting to Present. Okay, why is it not going for it? Okay, and your journey to presenting, let's ask some questions. Who joins you on the journey? Are you gonna do this presentation and work all by yourself, or do you have colleagues? What do you have to share with your peers? You just don't go up and present anything, right? You have something to share. When do you start this journey? Where's your destination? Where are you going to present? Why do you take the journey? What is your motivation to go in front of your peers and present your work? And finally, how do you get to your destination? In my talk today, I'm going to focus on the last question. The other questions will also be covered to some degree, but not all. But it's really focused on, hey, what are the steps? You know, and any journey of 1,000 steps must begin with a single step. There are many steps. You can look at it. I'm going to talk through the major steps and talk about some of the little steps in between. And so this is the outline of the presentation. First, know your conference. Second, write the document. Third, assess the feedback that you receive from the conference committee. Next, create your presentation. And finally, provide, you're going to give your talk, and you're going to prepare to actually give your talk. So let's start at the very beginning. Know the conference. Knowing your destination. There are many sources of information. Conferences have guidelines. Those are published on their website. The guidelines include, what's the time schedule? What are they asking you to submit for them to consider acceptance or rejection? What topics are interest? Sometimes they have, like, here are the hot topics. I mean, there's a special interest. Maybe you've gone to this conference before, but maybe you haven't. If you haven't gone to this conference before, but you think this may be the right place to present your idea and your work, find out people who have gone to the conference. Talk to them. Talk to people who presented the conference. Maybe you know someone on the committee, the organizing committee, or you know someone who knows them. Or if you're not too shy, you can contact someone on the organizing committee directly and say, hey, I'm thinking of presenting to this conference, submitting, and I have some questions. I want to know more about it. Your other source of information is what's been presented at the past at this conference. Papers may be published in a professional society conference that you may be able to access. Sometimes talks are recorded, and you can go look at those talks. Whoops, what happened there? You can look at those talks. Do your research. The more you know, the better prepared you are for submitting your great idea and work. The other part of knowing your destination is what's your responsibility? There are expectations And there's a timeline. Let's start with expectations. They're going to outline in the conference guidelines, you need to submit a paper or you need to submit an extended abstract. This is what's expected to cover. They may ask you to include references. There may be, I've seen recently where it's like, here's an abstract, we want to see a sample of your writing and other things. I mean, it can be a list of 5 things. Make sure you know what those are. There is a timeline, and a timeline is not just when the conference is and here to submit, but there may be intermediary steps, like when you will get the results of the committee's decision, as well as any intermediary steps if you are accepted. The deadline for submission, you should respect that. Sometimes deadlines are extended. You may not know that if you're not on the right network, or you have, sometimes you get email notifications. I get email notifications from the conference I apply to regularly, the International Test Conference. And if you're not on that mail list, you may not know. Respect those deadlines, but find out if there is an extension, that's an opportunity for you to improve your submission. So what kinds of destinations are there? You can first look at, hey, who's sponsoring this forum or conference? There are professional organizations. I just have a couple examples listed, like IEEE, which is a professional society I joined. Common in computer science is ACM, but there's also the whole open source community in terms of programming and software development. There are also company-sponsored forums. I've listed a couple in my sector, the semiconductor industry, the ARM Tech Conference, Synopsys user groups. On company-sponsored, they have a sort of a marketing perspective, but there is sort of, you're sharing your work. So they're going to share some of their latest developments. They may invite their partners to participate. They'll ask their customers to share the results of using their tools. The other way of looking at the types of destinations, the event type, it could be called a workshop. It could be called a symposium or summit. It could be called a conference. Now, as I go into the sort of definitions or clarifications of each of these, know that sometimes the names may be changed. So think about it as workshop is usually less formal and open to new ideas, and it's a single track, and it can be easier to get into. A symposium or summit may be single dual track, but it may be a little more formal. And you have a very specific topic they want to have people submit on and have a formal review process. A conference is usually a much bigger event. You might be having multiple tracks. It will be more formal and may address a more broader topic within a, and the review process is fairly well structured. So for instance, in the semiconductor industry for automation tools, there is the Design Automation Conference. It's a huge, right? Anything related to automation, but you may have a subset for physical layout, for timing, for manufacturability. What are you submitting? In keeping with the travel journey analogy, think about this is your travel application. You have this idea of work. Are you going to submit it as a demo, as a poster, as a talk? And when you submit, they're going to request an abstract, an extended abstract, or a paper. Abstracts are typically 500 words, excluding references. An extended abstract may be 1 to 2 pages, including references. A paper can be anywhere between 4 and sometimes they accept up to 10 pages, including references. That brings us to the next major step on the journey. You're going to have to write a document of some sort. And I want to ask you, are you afraid to write? A lot of people in the technical fields are kind of afraid of writing. They claim, hey, there's a reason I didn't major in English and majored in engineering. My advice to you is to view writing as a friend. You are working because you're paid to think about what you're doing and the results of your ideas. Writing is a way of clarifying your thinking. And Bob Caldwell probably said it best. The act of codifying one's thinking unfailingly reveals conceptual holes, mental vagueness, and outright errors. Writing is your friend. Writing up your work, you're going to have time to reflect, clarify, and go, oh my gosh, I forgot about this. Oh my gosh, there's an error here. I need to go fix this. It's a great process to help you do your work, independent of submitting something to a technical conference. I think it's no mistake that writing and work both begin with the letter W. In writing, as in work, there's a planning part. You want to have an outline to follow. You should know who your reader is. Spend some time ahead of time thinking about that. You may be co-writing this with your co-authors. You need to plan who's doing what. And as part of your planning process, who are you going to ask for feedback on your drafts? Then there's the act of doing. There's the act of actually, hey, writing fresh copy, taking that blank page or that blank screen and writing something. There's the act of revising your writing. This will be something you do a lot of. Create your figures and graphs that help illustrate your ideas or share the data that you've collected. And also part of doing is research your references. All right, what should be in an outline? No matter what, it should address what's it about, why it's important, what are your results, and what does this mean? It doesn't matter whether it's 500 words, extended abstract, or a paper, you need to address all 4 of these questions for someone on an organizing committee to make a decision. If you have a full paper outline, you can discuss this to much greater detail. A typical outline will cover the introduction, which may include motivation, reviewing previous work. The body of the paper, the bulk of it should be discussing what you did, were there methods you used, was there an approach you took, what were your results, and also discussing, hey, what do the results mean? And then having a summary, and then references. When people write their paper, this is the outline, they often neglect the summary. It's sort of written at the end, it is kind of hash it out. I want to point out it's the last thing a reviewer from the organizing committee is going to read. This is your lasting impression. Spend some time on it. References. This is a pet peeve of mine as a reviewer. You do not work in a vacuum. You work in a community of other people in your field, technologists. Some technology goes back many decades. Isaac Newton, the scientist, said, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Your work builds upon others. You may ask, where do I find references? Well, some of the main sources are your professional society. They often have databases of the papers, and you can usually pay access for that. If you work at a university or a corporate environment, they usually provide you access to it through your library. You can research things on the internet. If you only have URLs in your papers, that may or may not be acceptable within your sort of industry sector. So be wary of that. A lot of academic papers are also shared on there, so it's not a bad place. A common database for reference material is called Inspect. If you don't know about it, go talk to your local librarian. Reference types. These are illustrative references from a paper I wrote in 2016 on IP manufacturability. So the first one is, hey, I cited some previous work that was somewhat related to my topic. I looked for latest technology that would relate to my topic. I looked for, is there supporting data out there that says something about that comments, or supports something I'm stating in my paper. Is there any competitive data? Uh-oh. Okay, writing and revising go together. Pascal said, I have made this longer than usual because I have not had time to make it shorter. Revising helps you make it shorter, more to the point. And the process when you write your submission is you're going to write, you're going to have people review it, and if you work at a corporate entity, there's going to be a company approval. You write multiple drafts. At a certain point, you hand a draft to somebody or more than one person and ask for feedback on, hey, is this flowing well? Is it clear what I'm saying? You may want to have someone check for grammar. They don't have to be the same people who do these kinds of activities, but if English is not your strength, if English is not your native language, it's very helpful to have someone else look that over. All right, we're going on to the committee decision, assess the feedback. You're going to submit it, and then so many months down the line, you're going to get a decision back from somebody. What do? I'm here to tell you whether the decision is a reject or accept. There's feedback in there to help you plan your next steps. What do you do with a reject? This quote really spells it out to me as, I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination. Your destination is to present your ideas at a technical conference. So let's look at the feedback. Does it inform you about anything? If it doesn't make sense or you need to learn more information, don't hesitate to contact somebody on the organizing committee who helped review that. It's usually someone on the program committee, and ask them for additional information. Maybe, the acceptance ratio was 40%. If this is really where you want to go, then you're going to have to wait a year till the next submission process. Alternatively, you can go, well, I'll go to a different forum. Maybe you submitted to the premier conference who has an acceptance ratio of 30%. However, a workshop usually has a slightly higher acceptance ratio. Maybe you should start there and hone your ideas and hone your presentation. What do you do with an accept? Vincent van Gogh once said, great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together. You've already been working on lots of different things. If you put them together in your paper, you now have the opportunity to use the feedback to improve it. You have a schedule to meet to get the rest of your final submission in to the conference. You have the ability to revise your content based upon feedback from them and your peers within your own circle. And maybe you have new results to add. Maybe you've learned about a new reference or other techniques that you want to highlight. When you write, you're not there to explain. This quote really codifies for me what writing is. Writing is nothing less than thought transference. The ability to send one's ideas out into the world beyond time and distance, taken at the value of the words unbound from the speaker. It's a great reminder that whatever you write, you're not going to be there to answer questions if someone's reading it. So the final version of your paper. This is very similar to what you've already done. You're now going to revise, looking at incorporating feedback, including new results, and you're going to use your review staff, your people you've asked before, and you're going to say, hey, have I addressed the feedback that I was provided? Do you have any additional feedback? You may ask them for some very specific feedback. It's like, hey, I had problems with this particular section. Can you pay special focus to it? You will have to go through company approvals if such a process exists at your company. And then you submit your final paper or your final abstract to the conference. Next major step, create your presentation. The first step is know your audience. This table of questions is from Nancy Pewart's Slyology. And they're great questions. You think about your audience. What are they like? Why are they here? What keeps them up at night? How can you solve their problem? What do you want them to do? How might they resist? And how can you best reach them? And you have things to consider for each of these questions. Connecting them at a personal level, walking in their shoes, gives you an idea of what are they like. If you're at a conference, they're probably willing there, but maybe their boss said you need to go to this. But also, what do they think they're going to get from the presentation? Your talk may identify something that keeps them up at night. Clarify what their pain points are. How are you going to solve their problems? How are you going to make their lives as an engineer or software engineer better? What do you want them to do? What are the next steps? Is there clear action you want them to take? How might they resist your ideas? What's going to keep them from adopting? And then finally, this is where there's a lot of art to it, is how do you best reach them? The thing to keep in mind is that people vary in their preferences receiving information, independent of whether they're a manager, an engineer, a software programmer. You need to use multiple techniques when you communicate your ideas. I'm not going to read this all to you, but I'm showing you an example from the talk I gave in 2016, where I went through each of these questions and created this profile before I went and created my presentation. I put thought into who they are, why they might be interested, and how I may solve their problem, why may they resist it, and how can I best reach them. When you present, you should think about what do you want to have happen after you've talked, after you've given the presentation. And when I was in grad school, my classmate, Tom Story, told me, and the purpose of the presentation is to get them to read my paper. That's how he viewed it. At Intel, my colleague Tim Schumacher was renowned for the richness of the animation and pictures in his presentation of very complex ideas. And he shared with me, Anne, I want my presentation to be so good and so good at communicating that they don't have to read the presentation to know the material. Right? Here's two extremes. You may just want to make sure they go read the paper. You may want them to come talk to you afterwards and have an engaging conversation. You may want them to connect to you, grow your network to find like-minded individuals. How about having someone invite you to give this talk somewhere else? Or as Tim Schumacher is, I just want them to know the material. There are multiple ways to present your work at technical conferences. There's the demo, a poster, and a talk. Most of the advice I'm going to give in the rest of this presentation will be focusing on giving a talk. The next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about a demo and poster. The thing to keep in mind, some of the things about the talk and doing slides do relate to the poster and demo. Posters and demos are interactive presentations. The posters there to read, for you to talk to the people who are at the poster, point to diagrams. A demo is there to show, do you have a piece of software to show? Do you have a piece of equipment to show and talk about? You'll usually have a poster there as well. There are logistics. How big is the poster? How big is the space? What kind of electrical needs do you have? I mean, if you have a big, heavy piece of equipment, you may need more electrical. You know, physical space, tables, chairs, monitors. Do you need other props? These are all things to consider as you prepare for a poster or demo. Talks range from length of time. Until recently, I didn't know about lightning talks, which can be 3 to 10 minutes. They often tend to be a little more informal, and you really only have time to present 1 or 2 main points. Longer talks, which are more formal in nature, can be anywhere from 25 to from 25 minutes as much, or as little as 15 minutes with maybe another 5 minutes for questions. The cool things, unlike work presentations, no one's interrupting you. Questions and answers are at the end. If someone is going to interrupt you, hopefully the person managing the share takes care of that. Number of slides. I'm of the school of thought, I don't worry about slide length. There are rules out there where people say it's so many minutes per slide. I view them as restricting. People have 1 minute, 5 minutes. I'm here to tell you, I presented 9 slides in 3 minutes for a lightning talk. My PhD advisor, Dr. Wojtek Mali, I've seen him do 100 slides in 25 minutes. It's really about what's on your slides and how long it takes you to talk about it. It's about your time limit that you need to respect, because if there are multiple tracks, people may move in the same session between papers because they really want to hear a particular talk. How do you organize your information? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you just told them. Right? Redundancy is your friend. In your talk, you only have so much time. You only can present so much information. Your presentation outline could be the same as your paper, but I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be, and it may be more effective if it isn't. And if you have a full paper, I want to remind you, your presentation doesn't have to cover everything that's in your paper. Your typical presentation outline discusses motivation, describes an approach, covers your results, may talk about next steps or future work, have a summary, and have backup material. So if someone asks you a question, you can show it. What should be on your slide? I'm here to tell you that all text and long text is boring and you won't be listened to because the audience can read faster than you can talk. If you have less text, it's a cue, you can expand upon it. If you have more than 2 levels of bullets, this is really boring. I'm encouraging you to use images and diagrams and graphs to inform. Pictures often tell better stories than text. As human beings, we looked with our eyes before we had language and reading. A balance of pictures and graphs and text is something to consider because there are people who vary in their preference. Some people want the text, some people just want the pictures. If you have a graph, you may want to have the data next to it in a simple table. What should your slides look like? There's tons of information about this. I'm going to highlight just a few things to keep in mind. Color blindness affects 1 in 12 men. If you're in a technology field, that needs to be considered. I found out it affects 1 in 200 women. Color schemes. You can have light on dark or dark on light. I kind of grew up in my profession to do light on dark. Often conference will provide you guidelines and maybe even a template for you to use. You need to also remember that a projected slide from your PowerPoint is going to look different than it does on your computer screen. Always make sure you've looked at the projected version. And sometimes the conference committee will also review your presentation and give you feedback and may point out bad color choices, etc. There are tons of fonts out there. Typically, the rule of thumb is nothing less than 20 points. You can choose sans serifs versus serif. People have preferences on that. My advice, keep the same font unless there's a really good reason to use a different font. If you have too many different fonts, it's distracting. I know that Prezi is a presentation software that is growing in use, but till today, in most conferences, it's PowerPoint. There are 2 tools I really want to highlight to you. There's SmartArt and animation. SmartArt in PowerPoint allows you to build diagrams that combine text and shapes to communicate ideas. You may have noticed that I use that in some of my earliest slides. What's great about it, it saves you time. You don't have to hand draw a lot of these common diagrams. It also allows you to explore, hey, which way should I present this? Should I use a flow of stats? Is a pyramid? I really encourage you to play with this feature. Animation can be very useful when you have a complex idea and diagram to describe, whether it's a lot of some text, a diagram. It controls your audience attention. It can guide them to where you want them to pay attention. I will share it can be overdone. Hopefully, I have used it wisely in today's presentation. We're on to the next and final step in your journey to present to a technical conference, the talking part. Whether you're getting up in front of a large audience or just in front of your poster, you're going to talk, and practice is your friend. As the joke goes, the tourist asked the musician, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And it's practice, practice. How do you practice? This is rehearsing. Multiple dry runs in front of other people, even just to yourself. As you rehearse, you're going to notice things to fix, or people are going to give you feedback. You also need to know what time you have. PowerPoint has a rehearse feature. Use it. Public speaking. There are books, presentations, and everything about that. But typical issues are talking too fast because people are nervous, talking too soft or too loud. You may have a microphone there, but there's still that. And if you put your hands in your pockets, that can usually make you appear uncomfortable and more. Pause during your talk. It permits people to think. If public speaking is something you want to improve at, the organization Toastmasters provides a wonderful venue with a whole process on how to improve your public speaking. For the day of the talk, there are a number of things to keep in mind, and some of these you can address when you practice. But let's look at dress, calmness, eyes and hands, and water. If we look at dress, it should be professional for your industry and comfortable for your style. In terms of calmness, you've been practicing, and I want you to remind yourself you're an expert at what you're presenting. Practice with the actual equipment. Sometimes conferences have a little special room for you to go practice at. That's always good. The other thing is, before you head up there, close your eyes and take some deep breaths. What do you do with your eyes and hands? Well, eye contact is very important with the audience. They want to feel that you are talking to them, not to what's being presented, not to the screen. So move your head, move your eyes. If you're the type of person that talks with their hands, feel free to. It's something you naturally do. Don't try to force yourself not to. If you don't know what to do with your hands on, hey, just place them calmly at your side, or if you're at a podium, place them on this podium. Water. Make sure you drink plenty of water beforehand. Have some on hand. And actually, remember we talked about pausing when you talk? Taking a sip of water is a great way to pause. Congratulations, you have now successfully presented your work, your ideas, your team's work. Let's review the journey, because you may want to take another one. Know the conference. You're going to have to write something. You're going to get feedback from the organizing committee. When it's accepted, you're going to create some type of presentation, and there's going to be the actual talk at the conference. I've prepared 3 handouts that are posted on the website. Deanna informed me of that. There's a handout overall for getting to present where I just cover the basic steps. There's a audience profile, like with that whole Nancy Duarte table. Here's the guide. And there's a template for you to fill that out. And then a list of technical communication resources, some selected books and websites updated as of this month. You can follow me on Twitter at Engineer's Daughter. this is my email. Will get you to the right place. Feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. I am welcome an opportunity to present this presentation at your workplace. And I am planning a training and mastermind group around this whole process, of getting to present. I'm planning to offer this in April of 2018, and I'll keep people up to date on Global Tech Women. I am ready for any questions. Thank you.
That's great. Would anyone like to come online and ask any questions? Or you can also use the chat.
Okay, we have shy people.
We have 8 people. So can you, so I don't see any questions. So if anyone has any issues or would like to reach out to Anne directly, I know that she's been working on, you're doing a class, correct?
Right, I'm planning to do like a 6-month sort of mastermind group where I'll have some material to present, and then ongoing support with a group of like-minded people. And I'm planning to keep it small. My objective is to have a small class in person with Portland, and I may be able to support a couple of people who do online only with a couple stipulations, because they're going to have to come to Portland at some point.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Anne, for an amazing and thorough session. And as I said, the recording should be online in about an hour. And we'll put Anne's contact information out on the website also in case you want to reach out to her.
All right. I welcome the opportunity to present on a topic that I'm very passionate about. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody. Great session. Take care, everyone. See you at the next session.
Okay.